Chris, welcome again to the show, and tell us about what your company does.
Before we go there, let me tell you about Paul Harvey really quick. I heard he was one of the first voice personalities to trademark his voice. Now, I don't know if that's true or not.
Oh,
You can Google that and look into it, but he either tried it or he got it done. But Paul Harvey, I mean, it's a really interesting story. But after this is over, if you're interested in that kind of trivia, you can Google that.
There
we
you
will.
go.
Maybe we'll answer the question at our next show. So stay tuned a week from now to hear, did Paul Harvey trademark his
We
voice?
should get Paul. Is Paul Harvey still alive?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
If
He
he
has a
was, we
cool,
get him on and
he has a
ask
cool
him.
voice, and it's very distinctive, though. That's for sure.
That is
Yeah.
for sure.
And that's
Yes.
the rest of the story.
And that's the rest of the story. That
Yeah.
sounds like
That's
it should
right. Very good. You did well.
I'm telling my age. Anyway, Chris, I am so excited. Okay, so for people that don't know me, I have a doctorate in analytical and environmental chemistry, and Chris started an environmental company years ago, like before people, like right at the,
1982.
right at the dawn, right? So tell us how that happened and how that went and how you have done, like, what did you say, your 7 millionth sample or
6 million.
6 million
6 million
sample
sample.
testing?
Yeah, right. In
Wow.
our laboratory. Yeah. So I started out, I actually thought I was going to play Major League Baseball. Out of high school, I grew up on a small farm, I was athletic. I was fortunately good in the books too, but I was a male, young guy, and I wanted to go play professional baseball. So went to college, had a good round with it, had a tryout with the White Sox, and I didn't make it. So I had to go back to school, and that's where I met my wife. So the good Lord had a different plan for me. And I went back to Indiana University, double major in biology and chemistry. And then I thought, okay, I'm not going to play professional baseball, so I'm going to coach. So I thought, I'll coach this, I'll coach that. They should really let you do your student teaching first. So when I did my student teaching, I thought, I can't do this. I do not have the patience for this. I don't have that bandwidth to be able to do this correctly. So a guy that I was in a biochemistry class with said, man, we need an environmental scientist at our power plant. I was with AEP, American Electric Power. And he said, you have background in the environmental sciences. I've heard you talk. He said, we could really use you. So I called him and I said, Frank, is that job still open? He said, yes. And I took the job. So I actually started out working for AEP. My wife was an elementary school teacher, 3 children, a house mortgage, and just the list goes on and on. So I started consulting on the side, moonlighting. And I found I really enjoyed going and helping people, going to industries, municipalities, and helping them understand about how to test their water and how to fill out permits for the state of Indiana or for the US EPA. And so it got to where I was actually making more money moonlighting than I was working for AEP. So the light bulb came on. I talked to my wife and I said, I want to take a chance. And I will sit here and tell you right now, for you to be an entrepreneur, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this, you have to be willing to roll the dice. If you are adverse to risk, do not become an entrepreneur. You will not sleep. You will not eat. You will be feel like you're in trouble all the time. Doesn't mean you have to be. Doesn't mean you
Not
have
to be
a bad-
discouraging.
doesn't mean you have to be a bad gambler. It just means you have to be smart. I'll never forget. I heard this said once. Somebody said, "I don't just throw the spit wad against the wall to see if it stick. I take an educated guess. I do my research to think, is there a good chance that spit wad's going to stick on the wall?" And that sounds gross, but that was the analogy. But so we decided to take a second mortgage on our home, and found out that there was a laboratory in Evansville, Indiana. I actually knew the gentleman who owned it. Went down and made him an offer, and some of the guys that I played on a traveling softball team with, I hired them with pizza and beer. And we took a U-Haul truck and drove to Evansville and brought the laboratory back to Madison, and literally incorporated the company in 1982. I continued to work at AEP until I built up a strong client base, then left there, and I never looked back. And now we have nearly 40 employees, and we're we're one of the largest environmental testing laboratories in the Midwest.
Great.
That's amazing. I mean, you make it sound like you just kind of fell into it, but that you did it at exactly the right time, because I was in school in Colorado during those years in well, I think I hadn't quite got to Colorado yet, but anyway, that is when these testing labs started to pop up. And the people that got in at that time on the ground floor really were the flagship brands for that. And that's how, I mean, that's just amazing that you had the foresight to do that too.
Well, and I love it. I can't tell you enough of that. I mean, I absolutely love what I do. I never feel like I go to work one day.
That's great. So Chris, can I ask you a question? And that is, what kinds of things does an environmental laboratory test, and who do they test them for?
Great question. So starting out, we were doing regulated testing only. Regulated testing means that you're performing the testing for an entity that is required to have the testing done, like the federal government, US EPA, your state government, county government, city government, some agency that has control over your discharge of waste, solid waste or liquid waste, or the drinking water that you're dispersing to the end users. That's regulated testing. So we started out with regulated testing only.
So that means if a company has waste or is contaminating someplace, they have to submit a report to the government to make
Correct.
Sure that they're compliant with government regulations.
Or the drinking water too. Like,
Yeah, correct. You're both correct. Wastewater side, solid waste, yes, they have to send a report in. On the drinking water side, they also have to send reports in to make sure that they're providing good water to the end users. Of course, then you could get into talking about Flint, Michigan,
right.
Wichita Falls, Texas, San Diego, California, Newark, New Jersey, where utilities had one or more employees that did not do their job well, or the infrastructure just imploded. And again, that's a whole nother conversation that I travel all over the United States talking about on the drinking water side. But drinking water is primarily what we do. 70% of our revenue is drinking water. And so as time passed over the years since 1982, it became very competitive, the industry for regulated testing. So you'll find this kind of a neat little story, but we started taking little 150 milliliter bottles, and we were taking them around to county health departments and soil and water conservation districts in Indiana. And we had a little system. And so we put these little colored dots on top of the bottles: blue, red, green, purple, yellow. And I think we even had a white dot. But anyway, so we called it the Rainbow Bottle Program because of the different colors of the dots on top.
You were ahead of your time.
Yeah. So we took these into these locations so that the general public could come in and take these bottles with the paperwork for free. They could just go and get them, take them home, call our desk Monday through Friday, give a credit card. We take their payment. They fill the bottle, fill out the paperwork, take it back to the county health department or soil and water conservation district. And we have route drivers that pick up samples. On the regulated side, well, we just had our route drivers stop by those health departments and the soil water conservation districts and pick up those samples. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Safe Home branded drinking water test kits for use by the general public came to fruition. We established a division called Enviro Test Kits, which we registered that trademark. Then we had a brand and started building these little test kits. If you saw the Rainbow Bottle Program versus where we are today, you can go to safehometestkits.com. You can go to Amazon. Our brand is everywhere. Menards, Home Depot. You can see Safe Home water quality test kits. If you look at those kits and then think about a little 150 milliliter bottle with dots on top of it, that was the evolution.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've gone from the county health departments into retail, and now Amazon is amazing for us. We sell, I can't tell you, but a lot. We sell a lot of kits on Amazon.
Well, a lot of people are concerned about their water.
Right. So do people still need to send the kits in, or can they analyze, get a result right there?
Sure. And we have two platforms of testing. Great question. Two platforms of testing. Do it yourself. We call it You Test It. So we have these do-it-yourself test kits that the consumer can buy. It'll ship to their home, and they can test it at home and get the results there. Some of the tests are a matter of seconds. Other kits are a matter of minutes, but you can get the results at home. Do-it-yourself testing is awesome for screening your drinking water to get approximate values
Mhm.
of the values of the parameters that you're testing. But if you really want to know the exact values, we have other kits that are called We Test It or in-lab test kits, and they can buy those online. They buy them out of the stores. They fill the vials, and we have free return shipping to our laboratory. They just drop it in their mailbox. The vials come back to our lab. We extract the vials, and we can test. We have a kit. You're not going to believe this. We have
So
a kit.
Chris, I got a
Yeah,
quick
go ahead.
question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
How does bottled water stand up when you do these tests? Because we've all been convinced that bottled water is healthier than tap water. And I'm just curious, is it better or is it healthier?
You cannot say that in broad spectrum. Some of the bottled water companies do the right due diligence. They perform testing of their water. Bottled water is not regulated by the US EPA like tap water is that's sent to our homes. It's regulated by another entity.
Mm.
And to say it's more loosely regulated is true. Now, somebody will take offense to that, but it's absolutely true. We have a lot of people who send bottled water samples into our laboratory, and we perform the analysis on it so they can know.
So
And-
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I'm just, as a chemist, of course, curious. So you're obviously testing for metals, I assume. Are you? And I know that like some of the filters say they filter bacteria, but can you test for the plastics that might leach out of the plastic bottles, or what is the range that you can test?
Yes. So we have the ultimate test kit. It tests for 200 parameters. You can again go onto Amazon,
Wow.
Home Depot, our website. The ultimate test kit tests for 200 different parameters. That's bacteria, physical properties, inorganic contaminants, over 30 different metals, and over 150 different organic parameters that are carcinogens. So the answer is yes.
Wow. So
Oh.
are those based on the EPA list?
Yes, they are.
Oh.
A matter of fact, there's thousands more, but you just can't test for everything.
Right.
But the ultimate test kit, it was named the best overall water test kit in the US last year by the Spruce, and again this year by the Spruce and Good Housekeeping, named it the best overall water test kit. Now it sells for $400. It's pricey, but if you took those same 200 parameters to a laboratory, you'd pay closer to 1,000.
Wow. So in terms of as a consumer, am I better off buying bottled water or drinking tap water?
Well, again, day in and day out, I prefer bottled water just because I don't know a lot of the tap water. I test my own tap water at home, so I know it's there, but I put a reverse osmosis system in my home. I don't take any chances because there can be what they call burps or upsets. So any utility can be doing their job 364 days a year. But that one day a year, if they have a burp, they have a hiccup, and you're not ready for it at your home, you don't know what you're drinking. And it could be heavy metals, it could be microbiological bacteria, coliform bacteria. The list goes on and on. And again, we won't get into that, but fair question. If I went into a stranger's home, they say, Chris, would you like tap water or bottled water? 10 times out of 10, I would ask for the bottled water. But I probably would first ask if they had reverse osmosis water.
Right. Well, because there's a lot of lead in the old pipes, and that was one thing that's what happened in Flint was the lead got leached
Right.
out because they changed the source of the water. And anyways,
What
But-
about Brita water filters?
so yeah, we filter
Yeah.
through our fridge, and
Yeah.
that's what the water we drink.
So
at home.
refrigerator filters, filter water, water filter pitchers, dispensers, and so on. Again, there's the what I want to say: the low end, the mid range, and the high end. Do
Right.
your research because they're not all created equal.
Right.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So Kenya, do you have a comment or question?
I do. I just was curious, what is the scariest testing scenario you've ever seen?
Oh, the most serious? Oh, gosh, you and I could talk. I love the name Coach Kenya, by the way. I'm going to hear what you coach. I want to learn about that later. But being an ex-athlete, I love to talk about sports too. But anyway, so I guess one of the most serious. It's a series, but there was a farm, actually a huge ranch that was they had mares and studs that they reproduced. It was a breeding farm. And the home, I mean, this was probably a $5 million ranch at least. I mean, they had the finances to do whatever they wanted. The home was on a city water supply, but the the barn and the fields, they had all the watering trough was on well water supplies. And for those who don't know, a well water supply is when you drill down through the earth's crust and through the hard pan and you access an aquifer, which is an underground river. Literally, it's an underground river. And the pressure comes up through the well piping and comes out the top. So that's well water. A lot of people say well water is better than city water, and people say city water is better than well water. And again, they're not all created equal, and one's not necessarily better than the other. But so we received a phone call, and we told them to send us a water sample. But the reason they did so was because their mares and their studs were dying. The foals were being stillborn or being born deformed. They knew something was wrong. They brought in a lot of specialists and they said, test the water. So we sent them a test kit, and come to find out, and again, I can't tell you names for proprietary reasons, but an industry over 50 miles away, matter of fact, I think it's closer to 60 miles away, that was upstream on the aquifer, had been discharging waste onto their property, which was hundreds of acres, just throwing it out on their property for decades. And it finally got into this aquifer. And it was like, it didn't start when they first had the ranch, but we were part of that lawsuit from the analytical standpoint as professional witnesses. But there's just things like that. And there's another one, goat's milk. Who thinks goat's milk could ever be bad for you, right? A landfill that's close to these people's home had paint cans that had cyanide cleaner in it. And over the decades, the paint cans had, finally been crushed by tons of dirt on the landfill and water seeping down through and oxidizing the paint cans. And it burst open, and that cyanide got down into that aquifer and that water table. Well, the home was on, again, city water supply, but the feed that they mixed for the goats, the water they gave to the goats, and the water they put on their pasture was all this water from the well water. And the cyanide was over 100 times the US EPA maximum contamination level. And matter of fact, those people died not long after that. They actually, the kind of funny side to this is she came to our laboratory with her lawyer first. She thought her husband was trying to poison her. Truth.
Wow.
3 weeks later, the husband shows up with his attorney saying she's trying to poison him. And so because of confidentiality, we can't tell either one what we're doing. But finally, one of the attorneys calls us and tells us, hey, we just come to the realization these two aren't trying to poison each other. So we got to the root of the system and we found out what was wrong. We had to back trace the aquifer, and finally we found out where the cyanide was coming from. But they're just exotic birds. We had another one where they had exotic birds that this family was raising in a penned-in area with a farm pond. Well, because of the property around that area, they had runoff of pesticides and insecticides into the pond, and they had birds that were like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a piece, and they were breeding these birds, wanting to reproduce to sell the birds, but the eggshells, because of the pesticides, made the eggshells so thin that when the mother sat on them to try to hatch them, they'd crush the eggs before the babies could be born. And just, I mean, I could go on and on. I have hundreds of these stories, but
Well,
those are some of them, Coach, to tell you, Coach.
So Chris, I do want to talk about one thing, Chris, while
Okay,
we're on this type of
sure.
subject, and
Sure.
that is arsenic in rice. So arsenic uptake, or rice uptakes arsenic over other plants because of the way it's grown in water, and the arsenic is in the water, right? So
Sure.
can you
There are other plants that absorb it quite well as well. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so then they take that rice and they make baby food. So
Right.
can you test your baby food for arsenic using your kits? And I feel like there could be, I haven't studied this or researched it, a correlation between arsenic in baby food and all the autism and other diseases that we're seeing now that weren't so prevalent years ago, because it was in the 80s they really used all these pesticides on all of the crops, right? And
Sure.
so can you test for that with your test?
No, not with these kits. Now, we do test food products at our laboratory,
Okay.
but we don't test those with these test kits. Now, we have about 20 different test kits on the market right now. Most of them are in-lab test kits where you send the samples back into our laboratory for analysis. And you can go online and download your lab report 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's really easy. A lot of people take the lab report to the water treatment professionals who can recommend a reverse osmosis system for their home with our lab report. But to circle back to your question, we do test food products, other solids. I mean, we had somebody who had what was treated lumber. They had a deck. They built a deck out of treated lumber. They had a cat and a dog die. They took the third dog to the vet and come to find out that the dog's blood was super high in chrome and arsenic. Treated lumber is pressure treated with chromium, copper, and arsenic. Well, what happens is rain that falls is acidic. That acid rain hits the platform of the panels of the deck. And then when the sun comes out, that UV radiation hits that water on that deck and causes a reaction to take place. Then that water continues to get washed off below the deck. These cats and dogs were going underneath the deck and drinking out of the mud puddles. They were unaware, the homeowners were unaware. And then that ended up being something that they come to find out and realize that it was a bad scenario. But anyway,
Wow.
we can test food products though, or any solid, but mostly drinking water or water related items, lakes, streams, ponds. We test it all.
Excellent. Well, and you've built a huge business out of it, but you obviously have something people really want and need. So,
And how can people find you and your test kits?
Yeah, so Safe Home drinking water test kits, you can go to Amazon, HomeDepot.com, menards.com, safehometestkits.com to find all of our kits. And again, we have 20 new kits coming out between now and Christmas, and we'll have more broad spectrum, including solids. We're going to offer kits where people can ship solids back to us to analyze as well.
Well, that's just absolutely wonderful. And it's great that you're providing this service. After hearing you speak, I'm going to be very careful about the water that I drink and hearing about the consequences of bad water.
yeah, we should test our water just for the fun of it.
I
I
think
mean, we
we
do
should.
live in New Jersey.
Super fun side of the universe or
We
something.
looked up the super fun site before we moved here. It was one black ball on the map.
Right.
So anyway, that was Chris Myers, and you're listening to Passage to Profit. We'll be right back after this commercial break.